The University of Oregon is located on Kalapuya-Ilihi, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Kalapuya people. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. Today, descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon, and continue to make important contributions in their communities at UO and across the land we now refer to as Oregon. We thank the Native Strategies Group for this portion of our statement.
Okay. Ichnaatash, waníksha, Lúkwaiya, shuyapuɨmtki, Mitchell, wíimitx, skuulitpamápa, úlikanpa, KBSOPA. I just said my name's Lúkwaiya, but my English given name is Mitchell. I'm a student at the University of Oregon, and I work at KBSO. It's a radio station here on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. So I'm in the military. I've been in the U.S. Army for 5 years, almost. Yeah, 5 years. Just at my 5-year mark. It's last August. So I just came back from a deployment to the Middle East, and I was in Jordan for like 9 months, ish. And I was carrying a film camera. So I took a bunch of 35 millimeter, like black and white and color. And so all the Jordan photos, all of those are film. And so I was shooting it, and then I was just mailing the negatives back to Dotson's in Eugene. And then they were developing and processing my film, because I've gone to them for a while, and I always try to, especially when the pandemic hit, mail was taking a while to get there, but I was sending stuff to them and they were processing it, which was pretty cool. So, because I wanted to do it myself, but I don't know. It's just the whole, I usually do, but I like supporting them. But anyways, so yeah, that's where those came from. And then the other photos are digital. They're from the the EC graduation, the Early Childhood Education Center here. So there was a graduation, and I just took a bunch of photos of the kids in the process, because as you see it was a drive-through, and it's just, I don't know. I think we are really celebrating. I think the success of Indigenous students and their process in education, because it's very important. And I think, I don't know, people here really celebrated. They went out, like they decorated their cars, and they really made it about the kids. And so that's kind of I guess those photos just really were cool, and it was a cool experience. And I think, like I said, I'm working at the radio station here on the reservation. So a lot of the photo stuff I'm doing, I just go whatever's happening, because there's a lot of drive-through events. Because currently my reservation, the community, we're living through a pandemic without clean water, so there's not running water here. And so there's a lot of things that are happening, and the community still has to function, and people don't know about rural Oregon, and we live in rural Oregon here. And so like when services, there isn't a lot of services, there is one clinic here, and then there's a hospital 20 minutes away. Like there's just a lot of difference when you live here in the rural Oregon or rural America, even generally, because there's not as much services. Like broadband's an issue here. And so anyways, yeah, it's just, our kids have to live through those things, and have to really it shouldn't be hard, but it's hard, it's a fight, because our kids there's just a lot of things that are systemically happening here and have happened for a long time. And so I think it was just cool to document like a celebration of Indigenous excellence and just their achievements, because a lot of them were really happy and really just, you can see it in their faces. I didn't know how to pair. I wasn't necessarily, I don't know, I guess I wasn't necessarily gonna pair those photos together necessarily. I was just gonna share the Jordan photos initially at the time, but then I took these photos later at the graduation. And so then I was just kind of decided to use both photos, and just kind of looked at ones that matched, or that were kind of a group of photos. So we kind of looked, me and Torsten Shellstrand, he's a professor at the UO in the journalism school, and he helped me a lot through this process. I don't know, hard to be objective about photos you've taken and not be biased. And so it's hard to have, so it's good to have someone else kind of help you lay it out. This is my first time really doing that, because I would just share whatever I liked, and what I liked sometimes isn't what other folks liked. And so that's the hard thing I think about being, I guess, a photographer, kind of like a creative, I guess, is I don't know, because I never really cared about that kind of stuff. And now I'm having to learn how to do it in a way that, because when you have to share 10 photos or 8 photos, like how do you share the best? How do you share the photos that necessarily that tell a story? Not necessarily that they're not always the best photos, but which ones tell a story? So it's like finding that. I think I want to elaborate a little bit more on, I think the photos that I took in Jordan, just because, I don't know, I think a lot of Americans, we have this like xenophobia, Islamophobia, kind of like all these negative narratives about folks in the Middle East. And I think, even folks in the service do. And so it's a hard thing because a lot of people just have views about people in those areas that aren't true. And I think it's just kind of, it was cool to go and just be around people from that region of the world and just see that they're just people just like me and you. They eat and sleep, and like it's just to humanize them, And so I think, I don't know, I really got to know these people. And I think for me, it's like we all consume narratives or media that were very negative, as I think, as individuals and people in this world. And I think to say we haven't is a lie, like, because we all had to learn how to, I think, undo things that are bad, if they're stereotypical, if they're racist, that we all have to, I think, have to learn to undo that. And so part of that for me was like, I don't know, because I think all the narrative I've seen of people in the Middle East was like, the narrative of like terrorists, or like kind of like people that were out to hurt Americans, like that's the narrative that gets spoon fed and that we just kind of believe. And so it was just cool to go there and just be around them and like be around people and just know they're people, like just like me and you. They're working, they sleep, they eat, they do all the things that we do.
I'm curious, could you talk a little bit about how you got started taking photos?
Yeah, I just I started taking 35 millimeters. I guess I was like I think it's the thing everyone's doing, a lot of people that are younger. And so I mean, I don't know, I started that probably 2 or 3 years ago. I think like in 2017 or something ish. I started doing that, and I just started shooting stuff of like my friends, people around me. Just whatever I was doing, I kind of would just carry a film camera and just shoot. And so that's kind of how I got into photography. It was more of a hobby. I wasn't necessarily looking to monetize it or like I don't know. I just was. I just was. I didn't think about anything was going to come of it. I was just taking photos and just trying to, create stuff and just. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I started learning. Then I figured out they had a darkroom at the U of O, and I started using the darkroom there and processing black and white, making prints. Excuse me. Yeah, and then I just kind of. I wasn't in the J school, and then I started just. I met Torsten because I was doing other things across campus, and he was like, "You should take this class." And I was like, it was like a 400 level journalism class, like master's students and PhD students in it. And I was just like, I'm not a journalist, man. And he was like, he just asked me to be in it, and pretty much because I knew people and people trusted me, and I just am someone that's very vocal about the things that I care about. And so I don't know, he just knew I'd be able to find someone to tell a great story, and so I did. When I take photos of people, it's cool. I want to take photos that represent them. And so I think and I think that's always a good thing when people are like, they like the photos and they feel like they represent them. Because I think a lot of times people take photos and it's not always what people want. And I mean, I think that's been a part of my process too, is like making sure with people that they were represented, right? And like the photos are taken in a way that they're like, yeah, I like that. That is like how I want to be represented. Because ultimately that's what is being done. So I don't know. I think it's just fun to capture moments of people and just have a story to tell and share that story. But like, it's not also like pictures really do that. They allow, memory and like, and I think just they capture moments and they really just allow us to remember those things visually.